But I think we do have to ask us this important question. How have we created the world's largest democracy on the infertile soil of the world's most hierarchical society? But why didn't we create the world's largest economy? And that's an interesting divergence, right? I mean, technically, building a democracy would be harder than building an economy. An economy is an engineering problem, while a democracy is sort of a painting of a picture rather than the solving of a sum. And I would submit that in 1947, we made two huge risks. Some sociologists call them two reckless experiments, one political experiment and one economic experiment. And the political experiment paid off remarkably, and the economic experiment went wrong remarkably. That's okay. Postmortems have a certainty that prescriptions don't, and we are fixing our economic experiment since 1991. But it's important to recognize that the political experiment was a really big gamble. No country in the world had ever given universal franchise at birth. Some women in England got to vote in 1922. Some women in Switzerland got to vote in 1972. So no country had ever said that everybody will get the right to vote. In fact, most political scientists advise India that this would be a mistake. Let's do what the world has done, which is first give votes to the landed, then give votes to the rich, then give votes to the educated, and then give votes to women. And India made the 299 remarkable people who wrote our constitution, the Constituent Assembly debates. I would urge anybody who hasn't looked at them to do that. Probably had every debate that we are having today, but most importantly, they made the firm conviction call that everybody will get a right to vote from day one. And I think the difference between India and Pakistan born on the same night is that 3 million people win an election in India, 22 million people stand for election. So that political experiment, which from our constitution, we had a constitution by 1950, Pakistan didn't have a constitution until 1972 actually. So it's important to recognize that political experiment will. But what happened to our economics? I mean, COVID reminds us that per capita GDP matters more than total GDP. Right? We are fifth in total GDP, but we are 138 in per capita GDP. And the 1955 Avadi resolution was a bold experiment. The 1952 second five-year plan put that bold experiment into action, where we kneecapped the private sector, we kneecapped capital markets, we nationalized banks, we introduced the license Raj, and we decided that the public sector would have the commanding heights of the economy. But what was the consequence of that? It was that today India's labor is handicapped without capital, and our capital is handicapped without labor. We have 63 million enterprises, yet we only have 70,000 GST registrants with revenues of more than 5 crores. We have a labor force of 500 million people, but half of them, close to half, 45% in agriculture, only generate 14% of our GDP. Half of our labor force is technically self-employed. That isn't self-employment, it is self-exploitation. They are not pricing their labor, they are not pricing their family, they are not pricing the resources they put into business. And that's why I sometimes think that we have to be very careful when we sort of look at our numbers. But we are quite clear at TeamLease that unemployment or its first cousin or sibling underemployment is really a difficult question for India to solve. But this isn't a question like cancer or climate change. This is a plumbing problem. We have a matching problem. There are jobs where people aren't, and there are people where jobs aren't. We have a repair problem where people are educated, but they're unemployable. And we have a prepare problem. And I think that repair, prepare, and matching are very low-hanging fruit in the reform, in my mind. And I think that we are making some progress.